Hello, my name is John Schroeder. I'm a resident of Mariposa County, California, and I work for the Mariposa County Resource Conservation District. The context for this presentation is the planning phase of a fuel reduction project on private land. And let's assume that it's your land. You have chosen a fuel reduction contractor, and you are meeting with him today. Imagine that you are walking the property with the fuel reduction contractor, and the two of you are deciding which areas will be treated or not treated, and what kinds of fuel reduction treatments will be applied to those areas that are to be treated. The contractor will construct a map resulting from the walk showing all the different areas and the kinds of treatment to be applied. This presentation provides some thoughts on how a properly planned fuel reduction project can assist in providing both forest diversity and forest resilience, which are the primary attributes of a healthy forest. There are lots of different definitions of a healthy forest, but there are two forest characteristics that are usually included in every healthy forest definition: resilience and diversity. We will concentrate on these characteristics in this presentation. In our view, working toward a healthy forest consists of finding a good balance between these two characteristics. So resilient. Resilient means that the forest bounces back toward its former state from destructive events such as a wildfire. Diverse means that there are different area types, there's a variety of plant life, and there's a variety of wildlife. Here's what we mean by diversity. Area type. The forest is a mixture of open areas, dense areas, and areas in between. With respect to wildlife, large variety of species, insects to large mammals, even bears, and everything in between. Plant life, variety of species, grasses, shrubs, large trees, small trees, and so on. What do we mean by resilient forest? A resilient forest is one that can recover to its pre-fire state quickly from a destructive event such as a wildfire. By quickly, we mean months and years, not decades. In the Sierra foothills, wildfire is our big worry. A landscape is said to be resilient with respect to fire if the fire can pass through, causing limited tree death and leaving portions of the landscape unburned or superficially burned. This allows plant life to regenerate and recover in many places. So here are the resilience characteristics. Sparse ladder fuel. Trees are limbed up 10 feet. There's no brush growing near the trees. No flash fuels nearby. That is to say, no flammable materials near the trees, such as pine needles, grass, dead limbs, and so on. Trees are properly spaced, depending upon slope, 10 to 30 feet. And there's open sky between the treetops. This is called an open canopy. Here we have a list of things that can be accomplished to achieve resilience. Limbing up and thinning the trees, cutting away the brush, particularly brush that's near a tree, opening up the tree canopy, and disposing of the waste material by cutting it up, burning it, or chipping it. Finally, maintaining the result that you've achieved over time. Area types. A healthy forest should contain a diversity of area types. And what do we mean by area types? Well, there are 4 area types in the model we constructed for this presentation. Each type has different characteristics. The first type, open, contains trees, mostly large ones, well spaced, with very little fuel on the ground. The second type, semi-open, contains both smaller trees and larger ones. The trees are mostly limbed up, and there are some grasses and shrubs, and not much ladder fuel. The third type, semi-dense, has trees closer together, not always limbed up, some grasses, and a substantial amount of brush. It can be walked through, though, in most places. The fourth type, dense, is choked with trees and brush. There is no sunlight hitting the ground. It is difficult for humans to walk through a dense area. These 2 images are examples of open areas. The trees are mature, well spaced, with young trees here and there. Ladder fuels are sparse or missing altogether. It is the most resilient of the area types. While this area type is considered aesthetically pleasing by some people, it is not particularly diverse within itself, and overall diversity must be achieved by having other areas of a different type nearby. Semi-open areas usually consist of younger trees, well spaced, without much ladder fuel. There's some shrubbery and grass, but those things are well spaced from the trees. This area type supports both plant and animal diversity, and while it isn't as resilient as an open area type, it will still recover fairly quickly from a fire. Semi-dense areas are areas with more trees than semi-open. The trees are seldom limbed up. There's brush near the trees. While semi-dense areas are more resilient to fire than dense areas, a fire going through a semi-dense area will cause tree deaths due to the nearby ladder fuels. So the resilience is much lower for semi-dense areas than open and semi-open areas. Nonetheless, it's still usually possible to walk through such an area in most places. These 2 images show examples of dense areas. The trees and shrubs are so close together that a human cannot walk through them. Diseases are common in dense areas such as these. The trees compete with one another for living space and water. Other plants find such places inhospitable because the sun never hits the ground. So plant diversity within the area is low. The low plant diversity means less food for wildlife, so wildlife diversity is low also. Nonetheless, the edges of such areas provide hiding places for some wildlife species, so these areas play an important role in achieving overall forest diversity. The wildlife will move out into more diverse areas to feed. This table summarizes the resiliency and diversity associated with our 4 area types. Open is the most resilient and least diverse. Semi-open is somewhat less resilient, but has the most diversity. Semi-dense is less resilient than semi-open, but still has some diversity. And dense has neither resiliency nor much diversity. But all 4 area types do play a role in a healthy forest, and all four should be present in some proportion. How do you achieve a good balance between resiliency and diversity? Well, first of all, plan your fuel reduction project with care, turning your forest into a patchwork of areas of different types. You have to realize that it's the patchwork that allows for both resiliency and diversity to exist in the overall forest in some balance. In addition, make sure your fuel reduction plan excludes treatment in or near watercourses and gullies, that it excludes rocky steep areas, and that it leaves specimen plants and trees of different species untouched here and there. What if the parcels in your neighborhood seem too small for you to follow our suggestions if you are acting alone? The answer is, see what your neighbors are doing. In order to be effective in achieving diversity and resilience, areas of differing forest types should be at least an acre. This may mean that dividing a small parcel up into multiple patches of different forest types is not practical. This means you should seek to understand your neighbor's plans. They might be compatible with what you want to do. If they aren't, your neighbors might be willing to work with you as a unit to achieve the right kind of forest type diversity. There are many possibilities regarding your neighbors and their land management plans. This slide lists only two as examples. So find out what their plans are and how you and the neighborhood can act cooperatively. At this point, you're probably asking yourself some questions. If we're to design a patchwork of areas of different types, how big should they be? And which ones should be bigger or smaller? The answer to these questions depend upon two things. The first thing is the lay of your land, and the second thing is your goals for resiliency versus diversity. With respect to the lay of the land, you will find that gullies, steep slopes, rocky outcroppings, and the like will play a large role in what you decide, because they may be untreatable. Beyond what the lay of the land dictates, if you want more resiliency, go heavier on open and semi-open, with a lesser proportion for the other two. If diversity takes precedence in your mind, up the proportion of semi-open and semi-dense. But as you can see, there is going to be no single answer that fills all situations. And with that, let me say thanks for watching and listening.